So each month, the Choose to Think team puts together a compilation that we send out to leaders and decision makers in our network. It's time for our March 2021 edition of Insight Your Month, and I have Harish with me. Welcome, Harish.
Yeah, thanks, Ramanand.
So we'll kick this edition off with a recommendation of the podcast of the month, and this comes from our colleague Sanasi. So Sanasi is a big fan of the actor Alan Alda, who these days writes a lot about communication. He's kept himself relevant, even though his career has spanned over quite a long period of Hollywood and TV. So in his podcast, in this edition, he had Malcolm Gladwell, the author, and they spoke about first impressions based on Gladwell's book. So that was her recommendation for all of us. So with that, Harish, let me go to our Smartcast, our own podcast series. So which Smartcast did you enjoy? We did a lot of them again this month.
Yeah, so the one that I wanted to particularly call out was the one with Amit Somani. Yes, there was a mutual interest of reading and books that both of us could connect very easily on. But the sheer breadth of reading that he has done, and the kind of recommendations that he could give for specific roles and specific situations in your life and career was fantastic. He also talked about the concept of senti reading that we've often talked about. So there were a couple of books that he mentioned. In fact, more than a couple of books that he said he will be ready to read as many times as possible. One of them was Thinking Fast and Slow, which is our mutual favorite as well. And the other one that he mentioned was Bhagavad Gita. So my pick for the Smartcast this time is with Amit Somani.
But pure coincidence. I don't know
and
you were going to talk about it. It's there behind me, Thinking Fast and Slow.
Right. And what about the book, Raman? Which is your recommendation for the book for this edition?
So I picked up something called as Working Backwards. It's fresh off the presses, as they say. It's a book about Amazon, written by a couple of insiders who've seen Amazon from its early days. And so what I really liked about the book is it unpacks some of the origin stories of things that you now consider part of Amazon folklore, the approach to narrative writing as opposed to presentations. Uh, Whether they actually follow the two pizza team rule that we've heard so much about. So there is plenty there to learn about. What I enjoyed reading was how a lot of that has come through thinking from scratch, not being afraid to question convention, but also the messiness that goes along with introducing something different and new. So I think I would urge a lot of our listeners and viewers to pick this up. It's a good book. It's well written and a lot of interesting stories there.
Right.
So that was a very very recent book, but let me ask for our Blinkist summary of the month, something that takes a look back in time. So what was that book?
Yeah. So, in fact, before we go to the Blinkist, I wanted to ask a question on the book recommendation, Raman. It says working backwards. So, does it refer to this whole idea of when they launch a new feature, they should actually come up with a press report, press release kind of a thing, and then work backwards on how they want to go about it? Is that how the title comes about?
That is right. That is the concrete version of working backwards, but it also it's like their day one approach. The working backwards.
Correct.
It's also a philosophical approach wherein you start with what the customer wants, and then try and work your way backwards to where you are at the present. So uh, that's where the title comes from.
Right, and we'll do a different kind of a working backwards now when you ask about the Blinkist book summary pick for this month. So my pick this month is Broadband. It's the untold story of women who made the internet. Again, we've read a lot about women coders who were instrumental, in breaking the code, the Enigma code during World War II and all that. That sort of has got some kind of prominence because of the movies and a lot of books that have been written about that era. But post that, also a lot of women have actually contributed to some landmark things that have that have got initiated in the world of internet, including the internet itself, right? Tim Berners-Lee had one version, and there was another version which came from the UK, but just that Tim Berners-Lee's version took off very easily. It was fantastic. A lot of TIL moments for me, a lot of things that I had not heard of. We knew about Lovelace, Ada Lovelace, and Grace Hopper, but a lot of the recent ones were, big realizations for me.
True. In fact, a lot of the cultural aspects of the tech world and the World Wide Web, they were mentioned in the book as to how they've come from not just one or two people, but a group of people, some of them who happen to be women. And I think it's an appropriate collection to add to books like Invisible Women, the book about the people who contributed to America's space program. So there is a lot that we are uncovering these days about their silent contributions. Um, and let's switch gears from that recommendation to the trend of the month. I think we wanted to call out something called as NFTs or non-fungible tokens. I think we are going to hear a lot about it. It's gained prominence thanks to a lot of high-profile sales of digital assets, digital art, coming together with the the crypto community and the blockchain world. So I really didn't know much about it. So I thought uh, our listeners and viewers would definitely be hearing this, and we should call it out. We're going to link to a nice primer in our show notes and on our blog post. So that will tell you more about NFTs. Don't ask us; we are still learning ourselves. Um, but to
We
close
should probably
today,
add one to this video.
right? So um, let's close today's Insight Your Month episode with an appropriate pick. It's called How to Finish What You Start. It's an article by Scott Young, who often writes about productivity and learning. Um, we've read a lot about tips about learning and so on, but what I liked about this article was it talks specifically about the finishing of any uh, task that you take or any project, especially with learning, where there may be no concrete deadline or end goal in mind. We often focus on the starting, but I like the fact that he talked about the finishing. So one thing that people should read in the article, we link to that, is the difference between making a commitment and running an experiment. And that distinction I really liked, and that's a thumb rule he has been using. So, on that note, we will finish what we started, and we'll come to you next month with our next round of curated compilations. So, thanks, Harish. We'll say goodbye to all our viewers and listeners. Thank you.
Thank you.